The Nexeri Empire had conquered 17 star systems before they encountered Earth. Their success had bred not just confidence, but absolute certainty in their superiority. I should know. I was there when it all fell apart. My name is Kextel, former High Admiral of the Nexeri Expeditionary Force. And this is the story of how humanity brought our mighty empire to its knees. We first detected Earth's signals in what humans called the year 2045. Their broadcasts were a chaotic mix of entertainment, commerce, and conflict that painted the picture of a fractured, primitive species barely worth our attention. Our preliminary assessment labeled them as a Category 3 civilization, technically capable enough to be dangerous to themselves, but hardly a threat to our biomechanical warships and quantum weaponry. The Supreme Council authorized first contact under what we called the Soft Dominion Protocol, a practice that had worked flawlessly in subjugating dozens of species before. We would demonstrate our power, offer them the choice between voluntary submission or forced subjugation, and watch as they inevitably chose the path of least resistance. Our arrival was meant to be spectacular. 300 ships of the Nexeri fleet emerged from quantum space above Earth's major cities. Their primitive detection systems went wild, and their global communication networks erupted with panic, fear, and awe. Exactly as planned. I remember standing on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, our flagship, watching the humans' reactions through our monitoring systems. Their military forces scrambled their primitive aircraft, their leaders gathered in emergency sessions, and their populations alternated between panic and fascination. It was all so predictably chaotic that none of us noticed the subtle patterns emerging beneath the surface. The first warning sign came during our initial diplomatic meeting in their United Nations headquarters. We had chosen to send a small delegation led by Ambassador Vexnor, one of our most experienced diplomats. The humans appeared appropriately awed by our technology and intimidated by our presence. Their representatives listened quietly as Vexnor outlined the terms of their species' integration into the Empire. Then something unexpected happened. The human delegate from a region called India asked a simple question that should have given us pause. "And what makes you think we need your protection?" Vexnor, following standard protocol, activated a holographic display showing the various threats lurking in the galaxy. The savage Krell hordes, the machine consciousness of the Cybex network, the world-consuming Vorax swarms. The human representatives exchanged glances that we later realized weren't expressions of fear, but of calculation. The meeting ended with what we thought was their acceptance of inevitable submission. We were wrong. So catastrophically wrong. The next day, 12 humans died when one of their security officers made a sudden movement that our automated defense systems interpreted as hostile. It was a regrettable incident by our standards, but hardly noteworthy in the grand scheme of imperial expansion. We expected the usual response: protests, followed by resignation, followed by acceptance. Instead, we got silence. Complete and utter silence. Their governments issued no formal protests. Their military forces withdrew to their bases. Their media networks suddenly became preoccupied with trivial entertainment and local news. It was as if the entire species had collectively decided to ignore our presence. We interpreted this as submission through denial, a documented response among primitive species. The Supreme Council voted to proceed with the integration process, establishing our first ground bases, and beginning the standard resource acquisition protocol. That's when we made our fatal mistake. We believed their silence meant weakness. We believed their apparent disorganization meant vulnerability. We believed their technological inferiority meant they were helpless. We didn't realize that humans had a saying: silence before the storm. The storm, when it came, would teach us that we had fundamentally misunderstood everything about this species. Their fractures weren't weakness, they were strength in diversity. Their technological inferiority wasn't a disadvantage, it was motivation to innovate. Their silence wasn't submission, it was preparation. But by the time we understood this, it was already too late. The humans had spent those quiet months learning everything they could about us. Every demonstration of our power was analyzed. Every piece of our technology was studied. Every word we spoke was scrutinized. They weren't cowering. They were planning. And those 12 deaths, they weren't just casualties. They became a rally cry, a symbol, a debt that humanity would repay 1,000,000 times over. We thought we were dealing with just another primitive species. Instead, we had awakened something that would reshape the galaxy forever. As I record this from my sanctuary on a forgotten moon, I can't help but appreciate the irony. We came to Earth thinking we would lift up a primitive species. Instead, they brought down an empire. And it all started because we couldn't understand one fundamental truth about humans. They don't submit. They adapt, they unite, and they fight back. The storm was coming, and we had no idea how unprepared we were for what humanity was about to unleash. The greatest deception in human history began in a basement in Seoul. At least, that's what the survivors told me years later. While we Nexari watched their public channels and monitored their visible communications, humanity was orchestrating something unprecedented. A unified global resistance that never appeared on any network we could detect. Dr. Sarah Chen, a quantum physicist who would later become one of my most respected adversaries, led the first breakthrough. Within hours of our ship's arrival, she had already begun analyzing the quantum distortions our engines created in Earth's atmosphere. While we watched humans panic in their streets, she and her team worked tirelessly in underground laboratories, reverse engineering the principles of our quantum propulsion from nothing more than atmospheric data. But it wasn't just scientists working in isolation. A new shadow network emerged, using technologies so primitive we didn't bother monitoring them. Analog radio, paper messages, in-person meetings. The humans called it Operation Throwback, a global resistance network operating on technology too old for us to detect. General Miguel Rodriguez of Earth's United Defense Council later explained it to me. You expected us to use our best technology. Instead, we used our worst. Sometimes, the oldest tricks are the most effective. The 12 deaths at the UN became their catalyst for unity. Former enemies became allies. Corporate rivals became partners. Government secrets were shared. A Korean scientist would solve one problem, pass it to an Iranian engineer who would improve it, send it to a Brazilian manufacturer who would prototype it, and have it tested by a Canadian military unit, all without a single digital signal we could intercept. While we established our bases and began our standard resource extraction protocols, humanity was learning. Every piece of our technology we displayed became a lesson. Every demonstration of our power became a study in our weaknesses. Every Nexari ship that landed was scanned, analyzed, and understood in ways we never imagined possible. Dr. James Williams, head of the Quantum Adaptation Project, described their methodology. We didn't try to match their technology. We looked for ways to turn it against them. Every system has a flaw. You just have to be desperate enough to find it. The humans discovered that our quantum drives created subtle vulnerabilities in our shield systems during power cycling. Our advanced AI had a peculiar blind spot for certain primitive projectile trajectories. Our biomechanical ships, for all their power, were susceptible to specific electromagnetic frequencies that Earth's technology could easily generate. But their most stunning achievement came from an unexpected source: a team of video game developers in Stockholm, led by Anna Lindström, created combat simulation software that could predict our battle strategies with shocking accuracy. They found patterns in our supposedly superior tactical algorithms, patterns that stemmed from thousands of years of unchallenged military supremacy. The Nexari never had to adapt, Lindström told her colleagues. They never faced an enemy that could truly threaten them. Their tactics were perfect against inferior technology, but they were also predictable. And predictability is a weakness. 6 months into our occupation, while we congratulated ourselves on another successful planetary integration, humanity had already developed countermeasures to most of our core technologies. Underground factories, repurposed from their previous industries, were mass-producing weapons specifically designed to exploit our weaknesses. Military units were running combat simulations against our tactical patterns. Scientists were finalizing devices that could disrupt our quantum communications. The humans had turned their greatest apparent weakness, their technological inferiority, into their greatest strength. They weren't trying to catch up to our technology. They were building something new, something we wouldn't expect, something we couldn't defend against. I remember the day we detected unusual energy signatures near one of our primary bases in what they called Nevada. Our analysis dismissed it as primitive nuclear testing, something we'd seen many times before on developing worlds. We didn't realize we were detecting the test of a quantum destabilizer, a device that could turn our own advanced technology against us. Our arrogance had blinded us to the truth about humanity. They weren't just another species to be conquered. They were innovators, adapters, survivors. While we saw their silence as submission, they were actually holding their breath, preparing to strike. In my darkest moments, I wonder if we could have prevented what came next, if we had looked closer, thought deeper, respected them more. But we were too convinced of our superiority, too certain of our invincibility. We didn't realize that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their unity or even their determination. It was their ability to learn, to adapt, to take what seemed like disadvantages and turn them into strengths. While we watched and waited for them to submit, they were preparing to teach us a lesson about underestimating a species that had spent its entire history overcoming seemingly impossible odds. The storm wasn't just coming anymore. It was ready. And when it broke, the galaxy would never be the same. The day humanity struck back began like any other. Our quantum sensors showed normal activity. Our AI systems reported no unusual patterns. Our ground forces continued their standard resource extraction operations. Looking back, the silence should have warned us. The calm should have terrified us. At precisely 3:47 Earth time, everything changed. The first indication that something was wrong came from our primary quantum communication hub in what humans called the Australian outback. The facility's shields flickered for exactly 2.3 seconds, a minor fluctuation that our systems attributed to standard power cycling. We didn't know that humans had learned to detect and exploit these microscopic windows of vulnerability. Before our automated defense systems could react, primitive projectile weapons, simple rockets carrying sophisticated electromagnetic payloads, struck the facility. The electromagnetic pulse was specifically calibrated to our biomechanical ship's resonant frequencies, something we thought impossible for their level of technology. 37 Nexari vessels crashed before their crews could even understand what was happening. But this was just the beginning. The Australian attack was a diversion. The humans struck simultaneously at 17 key locations across their planet. Each attack was different, specifically designed for its target. In South Africa, they used sonic weapons that disrupted our neural networks. In Brazil, they deployed quantum destabilizers that turned our own drive systems into weapons against us. In Canada, they introduced a virus into our biological components that our immune systems didn't recognize as a threat until it was too late. Commander Ixis of our ground forces managed to transmit one final message before his position was overrun. They're not fighting like primitives. They're fighting like Nexari. The humans had studied us so thoroughly that they could predict our responses. When we tried to quantum jump reinforcements to threatened locations, they were ready with gravity wells that forced our ships back into normal space, right into prepared kill zones. When we attempted to activate our automated defense protocols, they used our own command frequencies against us, turning our weapons on each other. I watched from the eternal dawn as centuries of Nexari military doctrine crumbled in ours. Our superior technology, the very foundation of our power, became our greatest vulnerability. The humans hadn't just adapted to our weapons, they had transformed them into their own. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the physicist who had first decoded our quantum propulsion, led the attack on our flagship. Her strike team deployed devices that created localized quantum fields identical to our own. Our sensors couldn't distinguish friend from foe. By the time we realized what was happening, human forces had already breached our supposedly impenetrable hull. I remember standing on the bridge, watching through our internal sensors as human soldiers moved through our ship with devastating precision. They knew our layout. They knew our protocols. They knew exactly where to strike to disable rather than destroy, because they wanted our technology intact. The most humiliating moment came when their forces reached the bridge. I expected primitive brutality, revenge for their fallen comrades. Instead, I witnessed something far more terrifying: professional efficiency. They didn't waste time gloating or seeking vengeance. They secured the bridge, downloaded our databases, and began studying our command systems immediately. Colonel James Martinez, the human who led the bridge assault, simply said, "Your ship is now Earth property. Your crew will be treated according to the Geneva Convention. We thank you for your contribution to human advancement." By the end of what humans called Operation Thunderstrike, the Nexeri Empire had lost over 3,000 ships, 17 major ground installations, and our entire command and control structure on Earth. But we lost something even more important: our aura of invincibility. The data burst I managed to send to the Imperial High Command before my capture contained a simple warning. They are not primitives. They are not inferior. They have learned our strengths and turned them into weaknesses. The Empire must withdraw from Earth immediately. The High Command ignored my warning. They saw the loss of our Earth expedition as an anomaly, a fluke that could be corrected with overwhelming force. They didn't understand that humanity had only shown a fraction of their capabilities. They didn't realize that every Nexeri ship destroyed, every base captured, every piece of technology seized only made them stronger. The humans hadn't just defeated us. They had evolved beyond us, and they were just getting started. The Nexeri High Command's response to Earth's rebellion was predictable. Send more ships, more troops, more weapons. They launched what they called the Ultimate Pacification Fleet, 15,000 of our most advanced warships, carrying enough firepower to reduce Earth's surface to molten slag. The Empire had never failed to crush resistance, and they weren't about to start now. They didn't understand that they were falling into humanity's trap. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had become Earth's chief of xenotechnology, explained it to me during one of our conversations in my comfortable but secure detention facility. Your empire's greatest weakness was its strength. You never had to innovate, to adapt, to think differently. Every problem could be solved with overwhelming force. We counted on that. The Pacification Fleet arrived in Earth's solar system with typical Nexeri precision, emerging from quantum space in perfect battle formation. The humans appeared to have retreated, abandoning their orbital defenses. The fleet commander, my old friend Zextal, transmitted the standard ultimatum: surrender or face extinction. Earth's response came in the form of a single text transmission: "Thank you for coming. We've been expecting you." What happened next would reshape the galaxy's balance of power forever. The humans hadn't abandoned their orbital defenses. They had hidden them. Thousands of miniature quantum field generators, scavenged from our destroyed ships and modified with human ingenuity, activated simultaneously. The fleet's quantum drives, caught in a web of conflicting fields, began to malfunction. But this was just the beginning. As the fleet struggled to maintain formation, Earth launched their real attack. They had taken our biomechanical technology and merged it with something we had never considered: Earth's viral and bacterial diversity. The resulting weapons didn't target our ship systems. They targeted the biological components that made our technology possible. Your ships aren't just machines, Dr. James Chen, head of the Bioweapons Division, later explained. They're living things, and like all living things, they can get sick. The effect was devastating. Ships began to fail not from battle damage, but from the equivalent of a technological immune system collapse. Defensive shields flickered and died. Quantum drives sputtered and failed. Command and control systems became erratic and unreliable. The humans had turned our greatest technological achievement, the merger of biological and mechanical systems, into our greatest vulnerability. But they weren't interested in mere destruction. Each disabled ship was quickly captured by Earth's rapidly growing space fleet, crewed by humans who had spent months practicing in simulators based on the ships they'd captured in Operation Thunderstrike. Commander Sarah Martinez, leading one of these capture missions, sent a message that would become famous throughout human space. "Your technology is impressive. We'll put it to better use than you ever did." The pacification fleet's defeat was total. Of the 15,000 ships sent to subdue Earth, 12,000 were captured intact. The rest were destroyed by their own malfunctioning systems or by their fellow ships caught in the chaos of battle. Not a single ship escaped to warn the Empire. But humanity wasn't satisfied with merely defending their solar system. They had spent months studying our quantum navigation databases, learning the locations of every Nexari world, base, and fleet. They had analyzed our cultural and political information, understanding our empire's structure and weaknesses. They had even deciphered our economic systems, identifying critical resource chains and vulnerable trade routes. What followed was not just a military campaign, but a systematic dismantling of everything the Nexari Empire had built over millennia. Human-crewed Nexari ships, upgraded with Earth-based innovations, began appearing throughout Imperial space. They didn't just attack military targets. They liberated worlds we had conquered, shared our technology with species we had subjugated, and exposed the lies that had kept our empire's population docile and compliant. "Your empire taught us everything we needed to know to destroy it," General Rodriguez told me during a strategic briefing I was required to attend. "Every world you conquered, every species you subjugated, every piece of technology you hoarded, it's all being turned against you. And the best part, we're not keeping it for ourselves. We're sharing it with everyone you ever hurt." The Empire's response was chaos. Centuries of rigid military doctrine had left them unable to adapt to human tactics. Every counter-strategy they developed was based on outdated assumptions about technological superiority. They couldn't comprehend fighting an enemy that used their own weapons better than they did. But perhaps the most devastating blow came from within. As news of the Empire's defeats spread, as human emissaries shared their knowledge and technology with our subject worlds, the foundation of Nexari's superiority began to crumble. Worlds we had conquered centuries ago began to rise up, using human-provided innovations to break free from imperial control. The empire that had stood for thousands of years was unraveling in months, and humanity was orchestrating it all with a precision and creativity that would have been admirable if it hadn't been so terrifying. The fall of the Nexari Empire's capital world, Nexura Prime, wasn't marked by a grand battle or a heroic last stand. Instead, it ended with a simple transmission from Earth's United Defense Council to our Supreme Commander. "Your empire is finished, but your people don't have to be." The humans had learned from history, both theirs and ours. They understood that destroying an empire was easy compared to building something better in its place. While their military forces systematically dismantled our power structure, their diplomatic corps was already laying the groundwork for what would come next. Dr. Sarah Chen, now heading Earth's Galactic Integration Initiative, put it simply: we didn't want to replace one empire with another. We wanted to build something new, something that would prevent any species from ever achieving the kind of dominance the Nexari had. The humans called it the Galactic Cooperative. Its founding principle was radical in its simplicity. No single species would be allowed to hoard advanced technology or maintain military superiority. Every scientific breakthrough, every technological innovation, would be shared among all member worlds. It was everything the Empire had fought against for millennia. And it was exactly what the galaxy needed. I watched from my diplomatic observation post as human ships arrived at Nexura Prime. But they didn't come as conquerors. Instead, they brought scientists, teachers, engineers, and diplomats. They didn't tear down our cities. They transformed them into learning centers where species from across the galaxy could share knowledge and technology. The most surprising aspect of humanity's victory wasn't their military prowess or technological adaptation. It was their capacity for mercy. The 12 humans killed at first contact could have justified a campaign of revenge. Instead, they chose a path of transformation. "Your people have incredible potential," General Rodriguez told me during the formal surrender ceremony. "You just got stuck in a cycle of superiority and stagnation. We're here to help you break free from that." The integration of former Imperial worlds into the Galactic Cooperative wasn't always smooth. Centuries of ingrained superiority don't disappear overnight. But the humans demonstrated a patience we never knew they possessed. They established educational exchanges, cultural programs, and joint scientific ventures. They encouraged interspecies cooperation and celebrated diversity rather than enforcing uniformity. Perhaps the most profound change came in how they handled our biomechanical technology. Rather than monopolizing it, they established joint research initiatives, bringing together scientists from dozens of species to explore new possibilities. The results were extraordinary, innovations that neither humans nor Nexari could have achieved alone. The 12 humans who died in that first contact incident were not forgotten. But their memorial on Earth didn't celebrate revenge or military victory. Instead, it became a center for diplomatic training, ensuring that future first contact scenarios would be handled with wisdom and respect rather than arrogance and force. 10 years after the fall of our empire, I stood with Dr. Chen on the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperative headquarters, built, fittingly enough, in orbit around Earth. Below us, ships from 100 different species moved in harmony, sharing knowledge, resources, and culture. "Do you regret how it all turned out?" she asked me. I thought about the empire's fall, about the countless lives lost, about the fundamental transformation of everything my people had built and believed in. But I also thought about what had replaced it. A galaxy where species worked together instead of conquering each other, where technology served all instead of subjugating many. "No," I replied. "We needed this. The galaxy needed this. We just never expected it would take a species we dismissed as primitive to teach us how to truly advance." The humans had done more than defeat an empire. They had changed the very nature of galactic civilization. They had taken our weapons of conquest and turned them into tools of cooperation. They had transformed our legacy of dominance into a future of collaboration. And it all started because we made the mistake of killing 12 of them. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, perhaps, was humanity's greatest victory of all.